Hello, Christopher Brent here, coming to you today with a podcast on Sergei Rachmaninoff. So obviously this is one for the classical music fans out there. Maybe you are doing some research on Rachmaninoff and you want to just get some basic facts and information. Well, you have come to the right place. I could talk about Rachmaninoff and music from the Romantic era, especially Russian music. I could go on and on and on, and I'll try to not do that and keep things under control here. So, again, my name is Christopher Brent, and I'm a piano teacher here from Michigan in the United States. And I have studied Rachmaninoff's life and music since I was a little kid. I was always very fascinated by him, and I learned a lot, actually, when I was studying music in music school, and as I was getting my music degree, I performed a lot of his works and everything. So I have an idea for his sound and for his life and biography and everything. So he's a very fascinating composer in many ways. I just love the rich sonority, the nostalgic aspects of his music and just how it breathes life. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it's true in a lot of ways. He's a very sentimental composer. And you hear the nostalgia and kind of the longing, and he uses an interval of a minor six a lot to capture that, and that's something you're going to hear a lot. He was fascinated by bells and the Russian Orthodox Church, the sound of the bells. You hear that coming through, the nostalgia and even the depression that he dealt with through his life. So he wrote a lot of piano music, solo piano music, and piano concertos. He lived between 1873 and 1943, so he was in the Romantic era, kind of bridging the gap into the 20th century contemporary era, but his music is primarily and chiefly romantic in sound. So that's something that's very important. He never really got on the atonal train that other composers did, such as Schoenberg and many others in the early 20th century, the Second Viennese School. He never even really came close to that. So his music is loved and adored by many, and I think critics at the time thought it wasn't so substantial and even dismissed it as kind of being a little bit cheap and cliche maybe, or something like that. So there was always that was on his mind, and he had some incidents in his life, such as the failure of his first symphony and his first piano concerto, which brought him into a deep depression around the turn of the century. And he actually sought out hypnosis, which was kind of a new fad at the time, so to speak. And coming out of hypnosis in the very early 20th century, he came up with the Second Piano Concerto, which is probably his most famous work, as well as the Second Symphony. So the Second Symphony and Second Piano Concerto are probably his two biggest works, or most famous works, you could say. And coming out of hypnosis is how he found inspiration. So that was a big thing for him. Somehow it worked. So he got out of it, and I think that's pretty cool, and I love those works. The piano concertos are fascinating. They're very difficult to play. That's the one thing that you'll come to discover about Rachmaninoff's piano music, is it's very, very, very advanced. It's not for beginners. It's not for intermediate. It's not for the early advanced. It's for the very advanced. So it's very difficult, and typically you have to have a large hand to play it. You don't necessarily have to. You can get away with actually having a smaller hand and still working your way through it if you have the right technical aspects in mind. But Rachmaninoff's hand spanned probably a 12th on the piano, so that's quite a big span. So he was able to do that, and he wrote in that way. He wrote for basically a large hand, but you can, again, get away with playing it. If you have a smaller hand, you just kind of have to understand a few technical concepts. So obviously having lessons for many, many years is important. And I didn't always have the patience to wait till I got to an advanced level as a kid studying piano. I wanted to play Rachmaninoff right away, even as I was in the intermediate stage, and my teacher was always trying to get me to do my Bach and Mozart before I get to the Rachmaninoff, but I was losing patience and wanted to get right to the Rachmaninoff preludes and etudes and all that. And it was a little difficult, but I did my ABCs with Bach and Mozart and everything, and eventually worked my way into the Rachmaninoff preludes and the etudes and some of the other transcriptions and whatnot. But he wrote for both the symphony orchestra and for the solo piano, and he wrote piano concertos, and he also wrote choral music too. And he did write some chamber music, and he wrote songs as well. So the piano is really his home base, so to speak. I think that's what he's chiefly known for, really, is being a pianist as well as a composer, and he was a conductor. So he was active as a composer and a performer, which certainly paid the bills for him throughout his life. I think some of his most famous solo piano works would be the preludes. There's the Opus 23 set and the Opus 32 set. And there's also the Prelude in C-sharp minor, which is separate from those two sets, which is probably his most famous solo piano work altogether. It was always requested of him to play that work as an encore, often referred to as the It Prelude, because people would chant, play it, over and over again. And I think it probably drove him a little crazy, but the work made him famous in many ways, so it paid off. So the Prelude in C-sharp minor is probably his most famous of the solo piano works. The Prelude in G minor, Opus 23, number 5, is another famous march that is a prelude. And the preludes are beautiful. They're very short pieces, about anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes long, and they stick with a particular mood throughout the whole prelude. There's, I believe, 10 or 12 preludes in each one of the sets. And they're short, amazing pieces. Some are very heavy and virtuosic, and others are a little bit lighter in some ways. So there's some variety that you get. The etudes, tableau, is another beautiful genre of etudes that he wrote with a picture in mind, so to speak, for each one of the etudes. Those are amazing works. Again, very, very difficult to play. He wrote some sonatas for the piano, 2 sonatas that are extremely amazing works. So those are a little bit longer, obviously, and follow the typical romantic piano sonata aspect. The symphonies are amazing. Symphony number 2 in E minor is going to be his most famous work of the symphonic genre. So check that out if you can. I think he did live a troublesome life, but he did also have a way of managing with that. I think his music certainly was a big help. You know, I think he had good relationships, too, with people, and that's something that's important. He did have a daughter, and his daughter actually inspired some of the preludes around the time that she was born in the early 1900s. There are some good biographies out there. There's one that I read by Julian Haylock. That's a very good one. And there's another Rachmaninoff biography by Sergei Rachmaninoff. That's a very good one. So check those out if you get a chance. They're great books, and there's obviously so many other Rachmaninoff biographies. But some good pieces to listen to would obviously be the preludes, the etudes, the sonatas for the piano. The 4 piano concertos are amazing. Also, there's the Rhapsody on a Theme of Paganini, in addition to the piano concertos 1 through 4. Piano concerto number 3 is definitely one of the most famous. It's famous for its difficulty. It's extremely, extremely, extremely difficult to perform. And obviously many of the great pianists have performed it through the years to great success. Horowitz would be kind of the first one that comes to mind. I had a teacher that said that Horowitz owned that concerto, piano concerto number 3, and he did. Obviously, many other pianists play it well, but Horowitz knew Rachmaninoff personally, and I think there was a pretty good relationship there, and obviously when you know the composer, that certainly helps. But yes, Horowitz certainly was one of the great masters. I think he recorded the Piano Concerto No. 3 at least 2 times in his career and performed it obviously many, many times. But yeah, Piano Concerto No. 3 in D minor is known for its extreme difficulty. There was a movie called Shine, which I think came out in 1997, portraying a pianist who kind of went crazy studying it, so to speak. There's a little drama added into the movie. I'm sure that's somewhat fictional, but the movie Shine is a pretty interesting movie. So the piano concertos, Rhapsody on the Theme of Paganini, the symphonies, Vespers is a great choral work if you're looking to hear that side of him, and many of the songs. And there's transcriptions of his songs for solo piano, like Lilacs is a beautiful one. So there's so many beautiful works of Rachmaninoff. I could go on and on and on, but you definitely hear the Russian influence, the sense of nostalgia and longing, and a little bit of the depression kind of creeping in there, and the bells of the Russian Orthodox Church, which I believe he was fairly active as a Orthodox Christian. So he did move to the United States, and I think when he did move to the United States in the early 20th century, he did have some typical struggles of being in a new country, which is very common. But he ended up passing away, I believe, in California in 1943. And he found his home here eventually, but it took a little bit of time and getting used to things, and he definitely always had a love of the Russian homeland. So he was really one of the most virtuosic pianists of all time. His technique was one of the best ever. Probably on par with Liszt. I mean, he was so good. And we have recordings of him playing, which is really neat. There was, I think it was on Telarc, they did a piano roll transcription onto a Bosendorfer 9-foot piano. So they took the old piano rolls and somehow fused it into a machine on a 9-foot concert grand of today, which is a Bosendorfer piano, and you can hear Rachmaninoff's recordings in crystal clear sound on the Bosendorfer piano, and it's beautiful stuff. Check that out. It's on Telarc. I think it's A Window in Time, I think is the name of the album. Came out about 20 years ago or so. So we have recordings of him, and you can see or you can hear just how amazing his technique really was. If you have questions or thoughts or comments, please leave them. Email me at chrisbrentmusic@gmail.com. You can visit my website at www.christopherbrent.com and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing a lot of podcasts on classical music, jazz, commercial music, and maybe even some other topics. So keep an eye out for those. Okay, I will talk to you later, and I look forward to all of your comments. Thank you so much.